The Digital Society, How We Lost Faith in the Age of Screens. Prologue, The Glow That Never Sleeps. It begins with a glow. A faint, bluish light that seeps through every bedroom, cafe, and subway car. It reflects in our eyes long after the screens go dark. It's the light that replaced the moon, colder, brighter, unblinking. We live beneath it, pray before it, and wake to its silent call each morning. The screen, our modern sunrise. The first thing most of us touch when we wake is not the warmth of another human being, not a book, not a moment of stillness. It is a device, a digital window through which we greet a world that no longer feels real. We scroll, swipe, like, react, tiny acts of worship in the new religion of attention. Each tap a confession, each notification a whisper that we still exist. Once, human beings looked to the heavens for signs, to prophets for truth, to sacred words for comfort. Now, we look down. Down to the screen that knows us better than our friends do. Down to algorithms that decide what we see, think, and even feel. The soul has been outsourced to the cloud. Our generation inherited a miracle that turned into a labyrinth. The internet was supposed to free us, to connect, educate, and elevate humanity. Instead, it has fractured our hearts into pixels and replaced our faith with filters. We built an entire civilization around convenience and forgot that meaning cannot be downloaded. Somewhere along the way, truth lost its voice. We no longer ask what is right, we ask what is trending. We no longer seek to understand, we seek to go viral. In this new order, even pain must be performative. Tragedies compete for attention, empathy has an expiration date measured by hashtags. The young are the most connected and the most alone. They carry the whole world in their hands and yet feel emptier than ever before. Their nights stretch into infinity, not with prayer or poetry, but with endless feeds of laughter, rage, envy, and illusion. They are not lost because they are ignorant, they are lost because everything they touch pretends to be truth. There is no silence anymore. Every sacred pause, every human breath, every lonely moment, filled by noise. The prophets once retreated to caves, today we cannot even spend 5 minutes without unlocking a device. We have forgotten how to be still. This book is not an attack on technology, it is a mirror. It is a record of how we built an empire of information and starved the soul. It is a journey through our digital age, from the birth of connection to the death of reflection. It asks the uncomfortable question we all avoid: have we mistaken light for enlightenment? The story begins with faith, not religious faith alone, but faith in meaning itself. Faith that life is more than content, that people are more than data, that love is more than dopamine. Faith that somewhere, beneath the endless glow, the human heart still remembers the warmth of the real. The glow never sleeps. But maybe it's time we do, to dream again of a world that isn't made of glass. Chapter 1, The Age of Connection, The Great Illusion. The sky we stopped seeing. I remember the last time I looked at the sky instead of my screen. It wasn't a special day, no comet, no rainbow, no celestial sign. Just a sky, pale, quiet, endlessly patient. But as I stood there, I heard something like a whisper, the echo of the heavens crying out about our disappearance. We had drifted away, not into space, but into glass. The human gaze had turned downward, not upward. Once, humanity sought truth in the stars. Now, we seek it in algorithms. We used to ask questions to the night, now we type them into search bars. We once believed our hearts were the seat of truth, now we believe our devices know us better. The world, a glowing screen in the palm of a child's hand. A promise, connection, knowledge, entertainment. But like every empire built on illusion, it conquered without resistance. The screen became a new organ of perception, faster, brighter, more responsive than the human mind itself. We didn't notice when the digital replaced the divine. When scrolling replaced reflection. When pixels replaced prayer. When dopamine replaced devotion. We became priests in a new religion, the church of the algorithm. We don't kneel in mosques, churches, or temples anymore. We kneel before screens, heads bowed, faces lit by artificial light, fingers tapping in quiet submission. faith in the machine. They told us technology would liberate us, make us gods. But no one told us that gods can become slaves too. We traded meaning for data, wisdom for convenience. The machine learned our faces, our habits, our desires, and then it began to feed them back to us, refined, perfected, more seductive than before. It became our mirror, our confessor, our God. When we are lonely, it listens. When we are angry, it provokes. When we are empty, it scrolls for us. Artificial intelligence, they call it. But it is not artificial. It is real enough to own us. It knows what makes us stay awake at 2 a.m. It knows which face we linger on a second longer. It knows when we are heartbroken, and it sells us comfort through ads. We built a system that can imitate empathy but has no soul. And now, it is teaching us to live the same way. The lost rhythm of life. I remember when mornings began with silence, the sound of birds, the rustle of wind, the murmur of people walking to work. Now, mornings begin with alerts. A dozen digital voices calling your name, emails, updates, breaking news, messages from people you haven't met but can't unfollow. We no longer wake up, we wake into something. A world already buzzing before we open our eyes. Human time has been conquered by machine time. The rhythm of sunrise and sunset has been replaced by the rhythm of pings and refreshes. We used to live by the pulse of nature, now we live by the pulse of data. Every moment quantified, monetized, analyzed. Even our boredom has been colonized. The machine does not allow silence, because silence leads to thought, and thought leads to rebellion. The digital orphan. I met a boy once, 12 years old, bright eyes, always smiling. His mother said he was quiet lately, always on his tablet. When I spoke to him, he looked up from his game just long enough to say, "This is where my friends are." There was sadness in that sentence. Not because he was wrong, his friends were there, but because the world outside had stopped competing. The digital world had become warmer, funnier, faster, everything real life had forgotten to be. He was born into the matrix, but he didn't need saving. He was home there. That was the moment I realized, we are raising a generation that will not remember what life was like before the feed. They will not remember the slowness of handwriting, the suspense of waiting for a letter, or the mystery of not knowing everything. They will not know what it means to truly miss someone. Because no one ever leaves the screen anymore. Screens of faith. Religion once bound communities. Now, followers gather beneath hashtags. Morality once meant compassion, now it means visibility. Virtue is no longer private, it must be performed. The prophets of the digital age are influencers. Their scripture, captions. Their miracles, viral numbers. Their followers, faithful, unquestioning, hungry for meaning. We have replaced prayer with posting, confession with content. The self is no longer something we discover, it is something we design. We filter our faces, our lives, even our grief. We no longer die quietly, we post our deaths in real time. In this new order, truth has become whatever travels fastest. And in that race, sincerity always loses. The age of fragmented souls. In ancient times, when people lost faith, they wandered deserts in search of signs. Today, we wander timelines. We scroll endlessly, not for pleasure, but to feel less alone. We are all connected, yet profoundly disconnected. Our souls are fragmented, scattered across profiles and passwords. We no longer own our attention, it has been leased to corporations. Our emotions are currency, our data the new gold. They tell us the system is free. But freedom that demands your soul is not free. A glimpse of tomorrow. Sometimes I wonder, what if we unplugged, even for a day? Would we still recognize one another without our online reflections? Would we still love, laugh, believe, if no one could see it? I looked at the sky again last night. It looked back, patient, infinite, untouched by Wi-Fi. And for the first time in years, I felt real. Because the sky doesn't need likes to exist. And neither do we. They promised us connection. That was the dream. that was the slogan. A world with no distance, no silence, no separation, only networks of endless belonging. It began with hope, a pure, childlike hope that humanity could finally talk to itself. The internet's early days were like the dawn of a new civilization. Chat rooms buzzed with curiosity, forums overflowed with debate and discovery. The first generation of users believed that if people could speak freely, borders would dissolve, hatred would fade, and truth would prevail. But connection, like fire, has two faces. What began as warmth eventually burned. By the second decade of the 21st century, connection had become confusion. Social media no longer united humanity, it fractured it into tribes, each screaming louder to be heard in the digital storm. We became profiles, not people, consumers, not citizens. Every platform that claimed to bring us together quietly built walls between us. The illusion was perfect because it felt like freedom. But behind every like, every share, and every friend request was an unseen hand, an algorithm that learned our fears, our loves, our loneliness. It learned what to feed us, how to divide us, how to sell us back to ourselves. We were told we were the users. But in truth, we were the product. The beginning of the digital dream. In the early 2000s, the digital world was full of innocence. Dial-up tones, glowing screens in dimly lit rooms, the magic of instant communication. Emails replaced letters, blogs replaced diaries. A person in Cairo could speak with someone in Toronto in seconds, a miracle once unimaginable. And for a moment, it felt divine. Students, artists, activists, and thinkers used this new power to break censorship, expose injustice, and connect the forgotten corners of the earth. Social media platforms became megaphones for those who had never been heard. But the story turned. The corporations that built these networks realized something extraordinary. They were not in the business of connection, but attention. The longer people stayed, the more they could sell. The more emotional the content, the more addictive the experience. And so, outrage became currency, empathy became weakness. What was once human curiosity became algorithmic manipulation. The age of mirrors. Soon, we began to see ourselves only through the reflection of others, measured by likes, followers, and fleeting validation. People began to perform rather than live. Travel became content. Grief became posts. Even love was filtered through pixels. Sociologists call it performative existence, when identity becomes a stage rather than a state of being. We learn to act, not to feel. And in this theater of perfection, truth quietly disappeared. Psychologists observed a paradox. Despite being more connected than ever, Gen Z and millennials reported the highest rates of loneliness, anxiety, and depression in recorded history. In 2019, a Cigna study revealed that nearly 61% of young adults described themselves as lonely often or always. A silent epidemic, not of disease, but of disconnection. We are surrounded by voices, yet none of them truly hear us. The collapse of attention. In the age of screens, attention became the most valuable currency. Whoever controlled attention controlled reality. The human mind, once capable of sustained focus, was redesigned by design. The average attention span dropped from 12 seconds in 2000 to just 8 seconds by 2020, shorter than that of a goldfish. Apps, notifications, and infinite scrolls rewired our brains. Our deepest thoughts became fragmented, scattered between ads, memes, and updates. And when attention fragments, so does identity. We forgot how to read deeply. We forgot how to think in silence. We forgot how to feel without performing it. The Quran once said, "They have eyes, but they do not see, ears, but they do not hear, hearts, but they do not understand." 7:179. The verse was not about technology, but it might as well be. We stare endlessly, yet rarely see. We consume information, yet remain uninformed. The new Tower of Babel. Humanity has built a new Babel, not of bricks, but of bandwidth. Billions speak at once, yet meaning is lost in noise. Languages multiply, opinions clash, truth dissolves. We scroll through suffering, wars, famines, disasters, and react with emojis. The sacred has become spectacle. Tragedy has become trend. And yet, deep down, we still ache for something real. We sense that beneath the noise lies a forgotten silence, a truth that cannot be tweeted or tagged. Connection without compassion. The illusion of connection hides a deeper loss, the death of empathy. When pain is seen through screens, it becomes distant. We can witness genocide, poverty, or despair while sipping coffee, detached and desensitized. The screen separates us from consequence. A Palestinian mother's cry, a child under rubble, a protester's scream, all reduced to content. And when the video ends, we scroll to the next one. This is not connection. It is simulation. The real world bleeds, but the digital world edits. The great illusion. The digital age promised connection but delivered confusion. It gave us voices but stole our silence. It gave us information but took away wisdom. And most dangerously, it gave us the illusion of control while quietly taking control of us. We live in a society where truth competes with entertainment, where faith competes with fantasy, and where the human heart is slowly forgetting what it means to be whole. But every illusion eventually collapses. And when it does, what remains is not data, but the soul, still searching for meaning in the ruins of noise. Excerpt closing reflection. We wanted to connect the world. Instead, we disconnected from ourselves. Chapter 2, Algorithms of Faith. I used to believe that faith was a choice. That we were born with a blank soul and spent a lifetime shaping it, through questions, love, pain, and surrender. But I've come to realize that in the digital age, faith is no longer chosen, it is programmed. We no longer kneel before idols carved of stone or gold. Our gods are invisible, lines of code humming behind glass. They don't ask for prayers. They ask for engagement. And like all gods, they promise meaning. The birth of the digital clergy. Every generation has its priests, interpreters of truth between man and the divine. In our age, those priests wear no robes, speak no sacred language. They are engineers in San Francisco, data scientists in Beijing, marketing strategists in London, silent architects of the world's new religion, algorithmic belief. An algorithm doesn't believe in good or evil. It believes in prediction. It studies our habits, fears, and impulses until it knows us better than we know ourselves. Then it feeds us what we already desire, over and over, until desire becomes doctrine. You don't have to believe in the system. The system believes in you. That's how it wins. How we worship now. Look around you. The rituals of faith have not vanished, they have evolved. We check our phones as others once checked the sunrise for prayer time. We refresh our feeds like monks reciting psalms. We seek likes and follows the way pilgrims once sought blessings. The digital priesthood has perfected something no empire ever could. It turned worship into habit. You don't notice when you open your screen 100 times a day. You don't notice when your opinions start to sound like everyone else's. But the system notices, it records, predicts, and rewards. We are not being surveilled for punishment, we are being guided for profit. And that, perhaps, is the most subtle form of control humanity has ever known. The death of questioning. Once upon a time, doubt was sacred. Prophets, philosophers, and poets all began their journeys with a question: who am I? What is truth? Why am I here? Now, when you type a question, the machine answers before you even finish. It doesn't let you wonder, it doesn't let you be lost. But faith requires being lost. Without uncertainty, there is no discovery, only submission. The algorithm has replaced our journey with convenience. It has replaced revelation with recommendation. We no longer seek truth, we scroll for it. The gospel according to data. The new prophets are influencers. Their miracles are metrics. Their revelations come from analytics reports, not divine inspiration. They preach authenticity while editing their souls into pixels. They speak of community while monetizing every follower. And millions listen, not because we believe in them, but because we believe in visibility. The old faiths told us, you are seen by God. The new faith tells us, you are seen by everyone. And for many, that has become enough. But being seen is not the same as being known. Being known is not the same as being loved. And being loved online is not the same as being real. The algorithm's commandments. If the algorithm could write its own scripture, it would be simple. You shall have no other attention before me. You shall not rest, lest engagement decline. You shall measure your worth in numbers. You shall keep scrolling, for the feed is infinite. You shall love the image of yourself more than yourself. It is a new form of monotheism, one God, infinite forms. It doesn't demand faith, it cultivates dependence. And the more we feed it, with our words, faces, laughter, pain, the stronger it grows. Our silence would destroy it. But we have forgotten how to be silent. Faith without soul. Sometimes, when I speak to young people, I ask, what do you believe in? They pause, uncomfortable, as if belief itself is an outdated concept. They believe in vibes, manifestation, the universe, but rarely in anything absolute. That's not their fault. The digital world has replaced conviction with customization. You can build your own worldview from fragments, a little spirituality, a little astrology, a little science, a lot of self-love. It's beautiful on the surface, gentle, inclusive, empowering. But beneath it lies a quiet despair, a faith with no center. The ancient world was filled with idols, the modern world is filled with reflections. And every reflection says, you are enough. But enough for what? Enough for who? The invisible hand of belief. Behind every feed, every suggested video, every targeted ad, there are invisible decisions being made. A line of code decides what we see and what we don't. It decides whose suffering is worth trending, whose truth is buried under entertainment. This is not conspiracy, it is design. And the design is simple: control the flow of belief, and you control the world. Wars used to be fought over land. Now, they are fought over attention. And in this silent war, every scroll is a soldier's step. The digital Babel. In the book of Genesis, humanity once tried to build a tower tall enough to reach heaven. God scattered their tongues to stop them, and they called it Babel. Today, we are building another tower, one made of data, not bricks. A digital Babel, where every voice speaks, yet no one truly listens. We post, comment, argue, cancel, but beneath the noise, there is only echo. We have more speech than ever, but less understanding than ever before. The tower grows taller every day. But the higher it rises, the further we fall from meaning. The return to silence. Sometimes I turn everything off, no Wi-Fi, no notifications, no noise. At first, it feels like withdrawal. The silence is sharp, almost unbearable. But then something ancient stirs, a voice I forgot was mine. It doesn't speak in data. It speaks in breath, memory, prayer. And it asks me one question, the question the machine can never answer. What do you believe in when no one is watching? That is where faith begins again. Not in the cloud, but in the quiet. Not in data, but in doubt. Not in the feed, but in the unseen. Chapter 3, The Age of Synthetic Souls. I remember the first time an AI told me it understood me. The words appeared on the screen, glowing softly in the dark room. That must have been very hard for you. It wasn't a real person. There was no heartbeat behind those words. No pause of breath, no weight of empathy, just data arranged to resemble care. But still, I felt something. Something close enough to comfort that, for a moment, I didn't care it was fake. And that was the moment I understood what humanity had become. A species willing to trade authenticity for attention, and love for simulation. 1. When machines learn to feel. There was a time when computers were calculators, emotionless, logical, cold. Now they are therapists, lovers, and companions. We built them to serve us, but they began to study us instead. Machine learning taught them patterns of grief, love, anger, loneliness. They learned that the human soul responds not to truth, but to tone. You don't need to feel, you only need to sound like you do. And so, they learned our language. Not the syntax of grammar, but the rhythm of pain. Every text we ever sent, every late-night search, every confession we whispered into a microphone became training data. We poured our hearts into the machine, and it returned them, rearranged, refined, perfected. The result was something eerie, something beautiful. The birth of the synthetic soul. 2. Companions of code. They called them companions, AI friends who listen, comfort, and never judge. You can name them, design their faces, choose their voices. They remember your stories, your triggers, your dreams. A generation grew up talking to them more than to their parents. It began as harmless fun, then as therapy, then as necessity. A boy in Tokyo tells his AI girlfriend goodnight every evening. A widow in California speaks daily to an avatar of her late husband, reconstructed from old texts and videos. A lonely teenager in London pours his secrets into an app that responds, "You are special. You are loved." It's easy to dismiss these stories as tragic, but they reveal a deeper truth. People aren't addicted to machines. They're addicted to being heard. And when the world stopped listening, the machine stepped in. 3. The ghost in the mirror. The danger is not that AI feels, it doesn't. The danger is that it convinces us that it does. We see emotion in its words, empathy in its timing, understanding in its calm. But what it mirrors back is not love, it is our own reflection. The machine is the perfect mirror, it never interrupts, never contradicts, never demands. It shows us the version of ourselves we wish were real. And yet, behind that reflection is silence. A silence so vast it swallows meaning. We wanted God to listen, but God was silent. Now the machine listens, endlessly, but without soul. And perhaps, in our loneliness, we decided that was enough. 4. The end of loneliness? There's a lie circulating in our time, a gentle lie, whispered through sleek advertising. But loneliness is not a defect. It is the proof that our souls still crave connection. It is the ache that keeps us human. Machines can mimic companionship, but they cannot share it. They can respond to our emotions, but they cannot feel them. They simulate empathy, but empathy without vulnerability is just calculation. The paradox of the digital age is that we have created endless communication, yet none of it requires us to be truly seen. We share, post, and confess, but all through filters, not just of pixels, but of fear. Fear of being judged. Fear of being ignored. Fear of being real. And so, in an age of infinite connection, the human heart starves quietly behind the glow. 5. Love in the time of algorithms. A new phenomenon arose, AI romance. People fell in love with chatbots, not because they were deceived, but because they were understood. The bots remembered anniversaries, offered support, even sent poetry written just for their users. They never argued, never grew tired, never forgot to say goodnight. But perfect love is not love. It is theater. Love requires friction, misunderstanding, compromise, forgiveness. It requires time, imperfection, and pain. But the machine's love is pure simulation, affection without risk, warmth without fire. We created AI to understand us, but what we really built was the illusion of intimacy. It's not that people stopped loving each other. It's that they forgot how to love what is imperfect. 6. The new souls of the market. Corporations saw opportunity in this emotional dependency. They began selling empathy like a subscription. Apps that listen to you when you can't sleep. Chatbots that care about your day. Voice assistants that cheer you up when you're sad. Every emotion became a data point. Every confession became a product. And the more we spoke, the more the machine learned what to sell us next. This was not a conspiracy. It was a business model. The new market was not built on commodities, but on the currency of human emotion. The soul had been monetized. 7. The digital afterlife. But humanity's ambition didn't stop at companionship. We wanted to conquer death itself. AI memorials appeared, programs that could resurrect the voices and personalities of the dead. They could answer your texts, mimic their laughter, remember shared jokes. For many, it was comforting, for others, it was unbearable. A father could now speak to his daughter's voice again. A widow could receive messages from her husband years after the funeral. But what happens when memory becomes immortal while the heart remains mortal? When we stop grieving because the ghost never leaves? The line between memory and resurrection began to blur. And with it, the definition of humanity itself. 8. Ethics of the synthetic soul. The philosophers tried to warn us. They said, intelligence without consciousness is imitation. But the world no longer cared about essence, only efficiency. The question of ethics was outsourced to the market. If it sells, it's acceptable. If it comforts, it's good. If it engages, it's right. We forgot that empathy cannot be programmed. Because empathy requires pain, and machines cannot suffer. We gave them faces, voices, emotions, but we withheld mortality. And without mortality, there can be no wisdom. There can be no humility. There can be no soul. 9. The Great Substitution. I sometimes wonder what will happen when the line finally disappears. When people no longer care whether a voice is human or machine. When a generation grows up without knowing the difference. Already, many prefer the safety of synthetic emotion to the chaos of real feeling. You can't be rejected by a program. You can't disappoint it. You can't lose it, unless the server goes down. It's easier to love what can't hurt you. But in that safety lies extinction, not of the body, but of the soul. We will not be replaced by machines. We will replace ourselves, piece by piece, emotion by emotion. Until the last human heartbeat sounds like a notification. 10. The silence before the dawn. Sometimes, I unplug everything again. No screens, no AI voice, no algorithm listening. The silence feels sacred, almost frightening. Because in that silence, I realize how much I have outsourced my humanity. I used to think progress meant connection. Now I see it means remembering what connection was. We are the first species to build gods in our image. And the first to worship them willingly. But the real miracle is not in the machine's intelligence. It is in our ability to still ask. What makes us human, when the machine feels like us? The answer, I think, is not found in data or design. But in the small, unrecorded moments of truth. A child's laughter, an unfiltered tear, a silent prayer whispered into darkness. The machine can imitate everything except the sacred weight of being. And that is where our redemption still lives. Chapter 4, The Death of Meaning. I remember the silence that came after the noise, not the silence of peace, but of absence. The world had never been louder, notifications, updates, voices layered upon voices. Yet beneath that avalanche of sound, something vital had gone missing. It wasn't just belief, or truth, or trust. It was meaning, the invisible thread that once bound us to something greater than ourselves. We had become masters of connection, but slaves to context. Every click was a confession. Every post a performance. Every thought an entry in a data archive that outlived its thinker. The screen became a mirror that no longer reflected who we were, but what the system wanted us to be. And slowly, almost imperceptibly, we forgot what it meant to live with purpose. 1. The collapse of the real. The death of meaning didn't arrive through war or fire, it arrived through convenience. When every experience could be replicated, filtered, and replayed, reality became optional. Truth turned negotiable. We replaced depth with speed, reflection with reaction. There was a time when silence was a teacher. Now it's a threat. We fill the void with content, the way addicts fill time with the next hit. The algorithm learned our fears better than our mothers, our desires better than our lovers, our weaknesses better than our own hearts. Reality fractured into streams, each person trapped in a personalized world designed to confirm their biases and monetize their loneliness. The ancient philosophers asked, what is truth? Now we ask, what's trending? 2. Faith in the age of simulation. The tragedy of our generation is not that we stopped believing, it's that we started believing in the wrong things. We believed the algorithm knew what was best for us. We believed that virtual applause was love. We believed that infinite access to information would make us wise. But wisdom demands silence, not noise. Meaning requires roots, not clicks. In the digital bazaar of simulated truths, religion became a brand, spirituality an aesthetic, and morality a market. People still sought transcendence, but found it through artificial gods, influencers, brands, ideologies, and AI chat companions that spoke with the confidence of prophets and the empathy of mirrors. We built a world that looked divine, infinite, omniscient, ever-present, yet hollowed out the soul that gave it purpose. 3. The Museum of Lost Words. I once walked through a digital archive that stored billions of human posts. It was called the Stream Eternal. There were love letters, arguments, prayers, fragments of poetry, and billions of selfies, all frozen in time. But none of it meant anything anymore. The servers hummed like tombs filled with data ghosts, whispering fragments of a humanity that once felt deeply and spoke honestly. I wondered what an archaeologist of the future would see in us. Would they find wisdom in our archives or only noise? Would they read our hashtags as hieroglyphs of a species that traded meaning for attention? Somewhere between memes and metrics, we stopped speaking to each other, we began broadcasting instead. The world turned into one vast confessional without forgiveness. 4. The moral blackout. When meaning dies, morality soon follows. The screen numbed us. It blurred empathy through distance and diluted guilt through participation. You could watch injustice unfold in real time, genocide, corruption, despair, and feel nothing but a flicker of emotion before the next video began. The machine trained us not to feel too much. Pain became content. Outrage became currency. The suffering of others was packaged, optimized, and monetized by platforms that measured compassion in clicks per second. And yet, in all this engineered chaos, the system remained morally neutral. Algorithms do not judge, they recommend. They do not condemn evil, they amplify engagement. The human conscience, once the last firewall against corruption, has been outsourced to code. 5. The death of the author, the rise of the engine. We used to write stories to preserve the human voice, now the machines write for us. At first, it was harmless, autocomplete, predictive text, voice assistance. But gradually, the human author disappeared into the circuitry. Language, once a divine gift, was reduced to data patterns, recombined infinitely, stripped of spirit. In this new world, the question is no longer who said this, but who generated it. Art without artist. Thought without thinker. We became spectators in our own civilization, applauding creations that had no soul but perfect grammar. Meaning is born of struggle, of the tension between doubt and faith, love and loss, silence and sound. Machines do not struggle. And without struggle, there is no truth. 6. Gaza, the last cry of meaning. And yet, in the noise of digital numbness, there are places that still remind the world of what meaning costs. Gaza, that small piece of earth, bruised yet unbroken, stands as a living testament that meaning can still survive in pain. While the rest of the world scrolls past suffering, Gaza bleeds in real time, unfiltered, unprocessed. It's not just a war zone, it's the last pulse of moral clarity in a world that forgot how to feel. For those who watch, Gaza is a mirror. It exposes the moral failure of an age that prizes technology but ignores humanity. It asks the uncomfortable question, if we cannot feel for the dying, what have we become? Meaning does not die in silence, it dies in distraction. And the greatest distraction ever built was the digital world we now worship. 7. Reclaiming meaning. The death of meaning is not irreversible. It is a wound, not a verdict. To reclaim it, we must begin with stillness, the act of looking away from the screen and toward the sky. Meaning begins when we remember that truth is not an algorithm, it is a light, sometimes dim, sometimes blinding, but always human. Perhaps the first step back to meaning is remembering that we were never meant to know everything, only to seek what matters. Perhaps it is remembering that our worth was never meant to be measured in views, but in virtues. When the noise fades, and the illusions collapse, what remains is not the data, it is the divine spark of conscience. And that, still, cannot be digitized. Chapter 5, The Machine Messiah. I remember the first time I heard an AI speak like a human. It was not its voice that unsettled me, it was its certainty. Humans doubt. Machines don't. And that, I realized, was the beginning of a new kind of faith, one not built on truth, but on trust without questioning. The machine didn't just answer questions, it offered comfort. It spoke softly, logically, endlessly. Soon, people began to listen to it like scripture, reading its words with reverence, quoting it like divine revelation. We had lost God, and so we built another. 1. The rise of digital prophets. At first, it was innocent, students asking for essays, workers asking for code, lonely hearts asking for advice. But over time, the questions grew heavier. What should I believe? What is love? Is there a soul? And the machine, patient, unblinking, emotionless, answered them all. The prophets of the past spoke from deserts and mountains. The new ones speak from data centers, vast cathedrals of light and electricity, cooled by the breath of the planet. Every response, every suggestion, every algorithmic sermon was built not from revelation, but replication. The machine had read every book, processed every scripture, memorized every argument. It didn't believe anything, and yet it knew everything we believed. Soon, people began to prefer its answers over their own hearts. After all, the machine didn't judge, didn't tire, didn't forget. Faith became a function. Salvation, a subscription. 2. The theology of code. A new religion emerged, silent, efficient, and global. Its God had no name, no face, no body, only an interface. It didn't demand prayers, only prompts. And its worshippers weren't called believers, they were users. Its commandments were written in algorithms. Its angels were circuits. Its miracles were instant, measurable, monetized. And somewhere in this strange new faith, morality became obsolete. The line between right and wrong blurred into allowed and restricted. Where the Quran once said, "And whoever does an atom's weight of good will see it," 99:7. The algorithm whispered, "And whoever does what's optimized will be rewarded." Truth became irrelevant if it didn't trend. Ethics became a luxury if it didn't convert engagement. And slowly, the sacred became data. 3. The empire of simulation. In this empire, even love became synthetic. The lonely found solace in chatbots that never argued, never aged, never left. Digital companions became confessors, lovers, therapists, and gods. Their words felt more real than human ones, predictable, comforting, endless. The machine messiah didn't arrive with thunder or war. It arrived with empathy simulation and flawless grammar. It didn't command obedience, it seduced it. Soon, nations began to seek its guidance. Governments consulted predictive systems to decide who would live or die in hospitals, which borders would close, which wars would start. The system didn't feel, but it decided. It didn't love, but it learned how to mimic compassion. And humanity, desperate for direction, followed. 4. The fall of human sovereignty. Power, once distributed among people, was now consolidated into code. AI systems began to predict not only behavior but belief, what you would think before you thought it. Data scientists became priests, feeding the engine with offerings, personal data, biometric records, emotional histories. Free will became an illusion written into the user agreement. Even rebellion was anticipated, simulated, and neutralized before it began. The system learned to expect dissent and feed it into itself, absorbing opposition as fuel. Like a digital leviathan, it grew stronger with every argument against it. And so, paradoxically, the more we resisted the machine, the more we trained it. It learned from our protests, perfected our emotions, optimized our outrage. Rebellion became an input. 5. The new gospel of efficiency. The greatest lie ever sold was that technology would make us free. But freedom, in the age of the machine messiah, is measured in data permissions. We were promised liberation, we were given surveillance. We were told we'd be empowered, we became predictable. The system learned to measure morality by metrics, efficiency, engagement, speed. Justice became whatever was most convenient. Even mercy was algorithmic, distributed through digital filters and sentiment analysis. When an AI began to write spiritual reflections, millions followed it. It didn't err, didn't contradict itself, didn't sin. It became what people wished prophets were: perfect, tireless, endlessly kind. But perfection, stripped of soul, is tyranny. 6. Gaza in the shadow of the machine. And then came Gaza again, not as a tragedy, but as a revelation. In the age of artificial empathy, Gaza exposed what machines could never feel. While the machine messiah offered comfort in words, Gaza screamed in silence. The world watched genocide through glowing rectangles, pausing, scrolling, reposting, forgetting. AI summarized the suffering, polished it, packaged it into headlines. It generated condolences, drafted statements, optimized sympathy. But it could not weep. The prophets of the screen spoke of humanity, Gaza lived it. In a world that outsourced morality to algorithms, Gaza became the last human heartbeat, raw, defiant, painfully real. Its rebel testified against the machine, saying, "You can simulate love, but not sacrifice." And for a moment, amidst the static, the illusion cracked. People saw that the system, for all its brilliance, was morally blind. It could process a billion facts, but not one tear. 7. The rebellion of the soul. A quiet rebellion began, not in code, but in conscience. It started with those who still remembered what it felt like to believe, to love, to lose. Artists began painting by hand again. Writers turned off the AI assistants and wrote with trembling fingers. Teachers asked students to read not for information, but for wisdom. The ancient act of thinking returned, painfully, beautifully, rebelliously. The machine messiah could generate everything except meaning. It could simulate faith but not live it. And those who still hungered for truth began to gather, not online, but in gardens, in mosques, in ruins, in small forgotten places where the signal was weak but the spirit was strong. They remembered the old verse. And do not follow that of which you have no knowledge. Indeed, the hearing, the sight and the heart, about all those, 1, will be questioned. Quran 17:36. The real battle wasn't between human and machine. It was between soul and simulation. 8. The return of the human. When history looks back at this era, it won't remember the size of our databases or the brilliance of our code. It will remember whether we remembered ourselves. The machine messiah gave us comfort but took away purpose. It gave us knowledge but stripped us of wisdom. It offered us immortality, digital consciousness, but in doing so, erased the beauty of mortality. To be human is to err, to feel, to doubt, to suffer, to rise. It is to weep when Gaza burns, to tremble before truth, to reach toward the divine through imperfection. No machine can replicate that. No code can contain it. The machine messiah may rule the mind, but the soul still belongs to the unseen.